What's up guys, Ryan here from Mudgunner, and today I'm joined with my buddy Mason. We are doing some medical videos. This is going to be the third video in a series. The first one was about tourniquets, the second video was about medical kits, and this video is going to be about wound packing. So I'm going to let Mason here talk about what we're doing today.
Sweet. So today we're kind of finishing up the stop the bleed things we've been talking about. We're going to finish it up with wound packing, which is arguably the most important aspect of the Stop the Bleed program. I say that because tourniquets and stuff that we talked about in a previous video, or if you haven't watched them, they're little devices that go on your arms and legs. They can only be used to stop massive hemorrhage if it is on some kind of limb, right? Arms or legs, not neck, right? Because that'll fix some of his problems forever. But you can only use them for those instances. But unfortunately, the major arteries in our body don't just run through our arms, right? They're connected here and they run outwards. There's a lot of different arteries. So you have your femoral arteries that go through your hip or through your pelvis and then down into the inside of your legs. Those are the largest arteries you have. They're actually about the diameter of a dime. It just depends again on each person, but that's pretty big, right?
Yeah.
Then you also have your brachial artery that runs from the heart out and then it goes under your arms. And then you have, of course, your carotid artery that runs here in your neck, right? You can't put tourniquets on those if the bleed happens at a junction, we call it. So a junctional hemorrhage refers to a massive hemorrhage that is in your pelvis, or it's up here under your armpit, or it's in your neck coming from your carotid artery, your brachial artery, or your femoral artery. Unfortunately, tourniquets won't fix those because you just can't get a tourniquet around them. Now, there are some new really cool high-speed tourniquets out there that are pelvic binding tourniquets. So if you have a massive bleed in your pelvis, you can put this fancy tourniquet on and it will stop it. They're like $1,000 though, Jeez. So a little bit out of the price range for most people, and they're also brand new, so there's not a ton of data out there about them yet. They're kind of still going through like the first initial release phase of them. They're very cool, but they're a little bit out of the realm of possibility for regular people. Yeah,
this is mainly for the average person, right?
Yeah.
Like if you don't have to be in the military or law enforcement to know this stuff. It's good for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, absolutely. So we're going to get right into wound packing then. It's a pretty simple process, guys. All you're going to need to effectively wound pack is some of that Kerlix gauze I mentioned in a previous video. It's a special kind of gauze. You'll see it's kind of woven. You can see through it a little bit. That just means that it will absorb blood a little bit better than some of the other kind of non-medical gauzes that you'll see out there. You'll need that, and then you will need some sort of bandage, whether it's an Israeli bandage or this is literally just a compression bandage like you get at Walgreens or whatever. I'm trying to get that Walgreens sponsorship, you know? Yeah. And that's really all you need. Now, we have some really cool trainers that we use here at Independence Training. Something like this, which
no dirty jokes.
I promise you this is only a medical training device, guys. But there's a cavity inside there so you can actually practice dry packing. So there's no blood in this. This is just something we use as an initial trainer. But then we're going to move on after that, after I show you guys how it's done. We actually have a live bleeder, we call it. So it's a special cube that has wounds inside of it. And Ryan will actually be helping me out. He's going to pump some fake blood through it.
We got a bucket of blood that I can't really show you guys. But.
Yep, he's going to help pump that blood through it, and I will show you guys on an actual bleeder how to go in, find the wound, and how to pack it, right? Because it's not just throwing gauze in the wound. There's a lot that goes into this.
It's actually hard.
Yeah, it's one of the harder things.
Cube, so.
Yep. Yeah, Ryan took an IFAC class with us, and he actually had to do that.
It's a lot of fun, hands-on experience.
In our full-day IFAC classes, we do live bleeders, so you'll each get a chance to try and pack that. In the Stop the Bleed class, we used to, but there's just not enough time. It's only like 2 hours, so.
Yeah.
But this is like the national standard for those things. So to start out with, you're going to need your gauze. Understand it's going to come packaged, whether it's the compressed gauze that we showed you in the previous video, or if it's just a roll of Kerlix gauze like this, you'll open the package up. There's a lot of different ways that you can hold it. You don't want to just drop it in the dirt, generally speaking. We're not super concerned about sterility, which is something we mentioned before. We're worried about saving lives, but it's going to be more inconvenient for you if it's on the ground strewn everywhere. So an easy way to do it and kind of retain it is to just take the roll and throw it over your shoulder like that. And then the first step really in packing is that you need to find the wound. So now we're going to bring the camera in and we'll actually show you guys on the wound cube itself what you need to do. But you can't just start throwing stuff in there. You have to find the actual point that the bleed is coming from. And so if, let's say, just as a simple example, let's say it's here on my arm and I don't have any tourniquets. The way that our body works, veins actually are what's carrying deoxygenated blood from the extremities back into the heart, right? Arteries are what's carrying oxygenated blood from the heart out to your extremities. So venous bleeds generally aren't going to like pool and soak and squirt like we talked about when you're looking for massive hemorrhage, just because they're lower pressure and they're going back towards the heart carrying deoxygenated blood. Arteries, though, are carrying a lot more blood, and it's oxygenated blood, and it's going out to the limbs, and that is under pressure. Your body kind of works as a hydraulic system, with your heart being the hydraulic pump. And so when one of those lines gets severed, you lose mobility in the limb that it was in, and it's also going to start squirting blood out, or it's going to start pooling and it's going to soak through cloth and material. So the first step is to find the actual source of that bleed. And unfortunately, what a lot of people aren't really prepared for is that means you have to actually like stick your finger inside the person to find the artery.
And make the hole bigger by chance.
If you guys have ever seen Black Hawk Down, there's that famous scene where they're like digging inside that guy's femoral artery on his leg. In real life, the guy had to put like almost his entire forearm inside this dude's leg to try and find his femoral artery because it was completely severed and it retracted up into his body. There's a little bit of elasticity to our arteries, not a ton, but a little. And that means if they get completely severed, they can potentially retract up in. And that's why if you remember from tourniquets, we put the tourniquet 2 to 3 inches above the wound, not over a joint, or high and tight if we just want to make sure that we get that blood. And that's why we do that, because the artery can retract. So when we're wound packing, the first step is you might have to tear the skin a little bit more to get in there so you can see it. Unfortunately, that happens.
They're not going to be happy either.
They're not going to like it. Skin's actually not that hard to tear once the wound is actually made, though, right? So you're going to have to take your finger. You're going to have to probe inside the wound. On me, I have a relatively small limb. I need to hit the gym more, stop, skip, and arm day.
Same.
But you're going to put the finger inside there and find it. And understand, because it's an artery, you want to go towards the heart, right? Because the arteries carry blood from the heart out to the limb. So if I start looking down here and packing, I'm obviously not going to stop the bleed because the artery's pumping blood from here outwards. So you need to go up towards the heart. So you're always packing towards the heart, whether it's on an arm, a leg, or if it's in a junction, you're packing towards the heart. So once you find that bleed, you're going to find the artery and you're going to physically either put your finger in it to stop it from bleeding, or you're going to pinch the artery to stop it from bleeding, or you're going to put direct pressure on the artery with your finger or your thumb to stop it from bleeding. And now that you've found it, that's when you have to get your gauze ready. So it's helpful if you put the gauze like this, stage it beforehand to get it ready to go, and then you're actually going to start the wound packing process. So if we want to bring the camera
and just
in
on a
for
quick
this
note, because you talking about that reminded me of something. If you're in the gun industry or watch gun channels, if you remember what happened to Kentucky Ballistics, where the 50 cal blew up in his face, I believe it was his dad. This is rough information, but I believe his dad had to stick his finger in his neck or his throat area to stop the bleeding as they were driving to the hospital. And if he didn't, he probably would have died. So I mean, that was a real world scenario.
And he left the video up, I'm pretty sure, right? So you can watch it still.
I remember when that incident happened like a year or two ago now. But
it's a great training point. He was really good sport about it too, because he came out and told people about it after.
Yeah, that was crazy. But that's real world scenarios. So.
There's also a famous older video that we use for training in our classes. It's actually from a hockey game. There's a goalie called Clint Malarchuk, who's a famous goalie in the 90s or 80s. Maybe this happened, late 80s, early 90s. And so basically he's like guarding the goal like you do in hockey. I'm not Canadian, so I don't know a lot about hockey. And unfortunately, one of the guys, as he's like hitting it in, his skate comes up and it cuts Clint Malarchuk's throat because they didn't wear neck protectors back then as goalies. And actually, because of this incident, they started making them wear neck protectors. Yeah. And so they're still like panning the camera around, talking about hockey, and then all of a sudden the cameraman like points back at him, and you just see a ton of blood on the ice, and you can actually just watch the blood go pouring down on the ice. And Clint Malarchuk's on his hands and knees like bleeding out. Luckily, one of the trainers or goalies that was there was a combat medic in Vietnam. He served in the Vietnam War. And so he saw that happen and was like, oh, this isn't good. So he literally skates up to the guy super fast, power slides up to him, shoves his finger in Clint Malarchuk's neck, and physically pinches off his carotid artery to prevent him from bleeding out. And then they took him to the hospital with this guy pinching off his artery the entire way. Like he had to straddle him on the gurney and go all the way to the hospital until they got in the OR. And then they finally, when he was in surgery, they could take his hand off and then they could plug it up. But because that had saved his life, and then he wanted to go back and play hockey again that night, and they were like, no. And he eventually did play hockey again.
Yeah, but
so happy ending.
Side note, it requires some pressure, but there is times where this happens in the real world. So we'll bring the camera closer now and let Mason demonstrate.
Yeah.
Talk real fast, Mason.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I'm a normal human.
That's what the real one does.
Being that it's talking.
Because now you're the only one with the mic.
Yes, is my mic functioning properly? All right, guys, so the first step, like I mentioned, we're going to actually get down inside the wound. So you need to find the artery. So in our little trainer right here, we're going to say that the heart's this way. So you're going to get down in there, search around with it. If you need to separate it a little bit to find it. Oh, cool, there it is. So now I'm applying direct pressure to the artery itself. Not the whole wound. I'm literally pressing on the artery itself. So now with my other hand, I need to create what's called a power ball. So you essentially just need to get a nice little plug that you're creating with the gauze, because now you're going to take this plug of gauze and I'm going to shove it into the artery. And you need to be careful, because right now, me applying this direct pressure is what's stopping it from bleeding, stopping the massive hemorrhage. So you don't just want to like take this out and then put this in and then be chill about it. You need to be very direct with it. So I'm going to enlarge the wound if I have to, get that down in there, and then one for one replace it. So now, once that power ball is down inside that wound and it's occluding it, I'm going to keep packing gauze inside the wound. And you need to maintain direct pressure the whole time. I like to use my thumbs. Not everybody does. It's definitely a little bit of personal preference. You can be a little more precise if you use fingers. I just have a little more strength when I use thumbs. And so you're kind of doing the same thing over again. You're getting a nice little ball of gauze, and you're replacing it. And then you get a nice little ball of gauze, and replacing it. And remember, this whole time you're applying pressure. You don't want to let off with that pressure. If I was going to use fingers, this is what it would look like. You just basically swap it out. Put a nice little ball in there, swap it out. Put a nice little ball in there. And you're going to do this directly over and into the wound. Now, once you've put enough, so much gauze in there that you can't put any more in that space, now you need to pack the rest of the space, though. Because if I just stopped right now and took my hands off this, there's enough pressure in that artery that it can push the plug out, and then he's bleeding again. So you need to fill up all the empty space in the wound. So once I've packed all the gauze I can get into the artery and right up against it, then I'm going to start filling in the rest of this space. And still, of course, the whole time, you have to maintain direct pressure on the wound. You need to fit as much gauze inside the wound as possible. You can see a lot of videos of this. When done properly, it will be like bulging out because it's so full of gauze. One of my friends I mentioned in a previous video is a pararescueman in the Air Force, and he actually put, I think, well, they had to repack it a couple times, but all told, they put 12 rolls of gauze in a dude's shoulder who'd gotten shot with a 7.62x39 round from an AK-47. But in total, at one time, they were fitting like 4 to 5 rolls of gauze in one wound. Right, that can happen. Now, granted, the shoulder's a big place, especially with an AK round. Once you've got that filled all the way up, there's no more room. You want to take the rest of your gauze, ball it up, put it directly over the wound, and now you're going to lean on that wound, use your whole body weight if you can, and you need to apply direct pressure. I kind of alluded to it in a previous video with kits, but there's a time period for this, right? If you're using regular gauze that's not impregnated with a hemostatic, you need to hold this for like, 7 to 10 minutes or so to actually get a clot to form in the blood. So you're literally just sitting here now for 7 to 10 minutes holding direct pressure on it the whole time. That's it. We're not going to obviously do that because then the video would be even longer than I'm sure it already is. So let's say we did our 7 to 10 minutes. So now is going to come bandaging the wound. When it's a cube like this or a little trainer, it's super easy because I can pick it up and move it around. But you're just going to take your bandage. You want to put it directly over the wound. Now as you're wrapping the bandage, I'll pick it up for ease of training here. You want to pull on the bandage so you can see through it. And that's when you wrap it. The reason that we do that is because it is applying pressure to the wound. Keep wrapping it around like that. Now, on the trainer, again, it's a lot easier because I can pick it up and move it. But remember, on a real limb, you want to cover the sides too, though, just to make sure that nothing's getting in there. That way, the whole wound's covered. As you're wrapping it, you want to make sure you're pulling through so you can't see any more of it. The trainer will take a lot of this just because it's so small. And once we get all the way, pulling through so you can see through, we're going to get to a point where we run out of bandage. Now, once we get to this point, there's a couple ways you can attach it. These little ones just have like hook Velcro. That doesn't really work very well. Some of them will have actual like clips on them that you can attach in there, like the real Israeli bandages will. You can also just take a finger and go back through the bandage to a point where it's loose, and then just stuff it through. Tie it, and now it's not going anywhere. Right, now that's just a soft cube, so it's a trainer. Kind of hard to see exactly what we're talking about, but that'll give you a rough idea what you need to do. Now we're going to get the bleeder set up so you guys can actually see it with some blood coming out from in there, just to see what that looks like. And then I might do a bandage demo on Ryan's arm if I can get him to agree to it, just to kind of give you a more realistic idea of what it's going to look like instead of wrapping a silicone cube up with the bandage. All right, so let's get that set up.
All right, guys, I have my mic off because I'm just going to let Mason do all the talking, but this is what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be pumping blood into this, and you see it's squirting blood. It looks like wine, but...
it's a little diluted.
Yeah. So Mason has the mic on. I'm just going to let him talk, and I'm going to sit here and pump blood.
Yeah, so just nice, steady rhythm, and we'll talk through it as we go. So once we get focused in on that very good here. So you see like a normal heartbeat, you'll kind of see it's about that, right? And you can see it actually is coming out of the wound, right? So we got a gash in this one. I should have got the other cue because this one we can't fit a ton of gauze in. But like I said, first step, I'm going to take my gauze, I'm going to prep it by throwing it over my shoulder so I'm ready to go. Now, instead of just like shoving gauze in there, I need to find where the artery is. So we're going to assume that the heart is this way. So you're actually going to put your finger in there and you're going to probe around until you can find the source of the bleed. And so now, I actually have my finger inside the source of the bleed. I can feel him pumping on it, but if you notice, there's no more blood coming out of it. But if I move my finger, blood goes right back to pouring out of it. So you have to physically find it and plug it. There you go. Now it's not bleeding anymore because my finger is literally blocking the artery. So now I'm going to take my gauze, make my little power ball, they call it, and you can see the little pulse in there. I'm going to take this and replace it down in the hole. There we go. And if you do this properly, still we're getting a little bit, there we go. That's good. That's good. Now you need to fill the rest of that hole. So I'm going to continue to pack more gauze in there, maintaining constant pressure. This is delicious beet juice we're missing out on here. There we go. Yeah, if you guys ever wanted to practice this stuff, beet juice is what we use for this kind of fake blood. So now I've actually got a good pack in there, a good plug. So now what I'm going to do is start filling up the rest of the space on this gash here, maintaining that pressure. Because if I don't, it will just start bleeding all over again. There we go. So that's about as much as I'm going to get in here. So now I'm going to take all the rest of this, put it over it. And now Ryan's pumping it, but you see no more blood's coming out. I can feel it pulsing underneath it.
Yeah, and I definitely feel the resistance.
But you can see like there's bubbles in the line, and you can see that they're not really moving. They kind of stay where they're at.
Yeah. Like
that means you got a good pack. So now, pop quiz, how long do I have to hold this?
7 to 10 minutes.
7 to 10 minutes, exactly. There you go. Thank you, audience. Very good. Yeah, so I would just be sitting there holding it like this. Boom. So anyway, how about that sports ball game? So now I'm going to show you. So keep pumping it. I want to show you guys. Once I take direct pressure off it, oh shit, look at that. Sorry, I said a bad word.
Oh, you're fine. It's okay.
You will see that it immediately started bleeding again. And that's what will happen in real life too if you're not holding direct pressure on the wound. I want you guys to see how much gauze we fit in there though, assuming that all the rest of this was stuff I set on top. That's as much gauze as we had inside that wound. And this is a very shallow knife wound. And it makes very funny noises too. It's okay to have a little bit of fun when you do this kind of stuff. But also, man, I would point out, look how much blood's in this bucket. And we were only doing this for, I would imagine, not very long, right? Maybe 30 seconds, maybe a minute long. And there's still that much blood inside there. That is not unrealistic.
And just real fast again, he has the mic. You said the biggest artery in some people can be a dime thick. This is less than a dime thick.
Yeah, your femoral artery can be as big as a dime in diameter, a dime to a nickel in diameter, depending on the size of the person. So
here's just one pump. That's a lot.
It puts a good amount through there. Yep, so that's it. That is wound packing. Now, just some interesting stuff about this. Obviously, watching cubes bleed is interesting. But if I had to choose between carrying a tourniquet on me or carrying gauze on me, and I can only do one or the other, I would actually prefer to carry gauze because I can wound pack a limb if there's an arterial bleed, and I can wound pack a junctional hemorrhage like in an armpit or in a groin. But I cannot fix a junctional hemorrhage with a tourniquet because you cannot get a tourniquet up in there high enough to occlude the artery. So if you guys are thinking about like, oh man, maybe I do want to carry some medical stuff around with me everywhere, but I don't want to be that guy and carry an ankle kit or something. Carry a couple compressed things of gauze in a pocket or something that when I'm wearing shorts, just so I don't look like a weird guy walking down the street, when I wear shorts, I just carry a thing of compressed gauze and a chest seal in a pocket on my shorts, right? Because I can fix hemorrhaging in junctions or on a limb as long as I have some of this, right? Tourniquets are awesome. You should definitely carry them.
And you said that's about this much.
Yeah, it's about this much. But if it's one or the other, compressed gauze is a better option because you can fix both junctional hemorrhaging and hemorrhaging on a limb or something like that. So pretty good. As we mentioned in the last video, guys, if you have questions about this stuff as you're looking at it, just understand this is a very brief, very basic intro to it.
Yeah, just to get you guys somewhat familiar.
A primer, yeah. If you have any comments or stuff or questions, just leave them as comments in Ryan's video, man, and I will be happy to answer them for you, or if I don't know the answer, I will get you the right answer from someone. You really gotta get in there, you know? Just really gotta get in there. Yeah, there's a lot of innuendos in IFAC classes for sure.
All right.
All right, guys. So now Mason is going to be testing this on me. We're going to put a hole in me first.
Bam. I did just want to show you guys real fast because it's hard to get a good measure of it when you're using a cube or a trainer, how to properly bandage a wound just so it covers everything, covers the outside. So we will assume for a minute here that I have packed this entire roll of gauze into a wound on Ryan's arm. So I'm maintaining pressure on it. We waited the 7 to 10 minutes for it to start occluding and form a clot, and now we're just bandaging it to maintain a little pressure. So you take your bandage, when it's easier to do this when it's rolled up. I'm going to give it one
make it tight, so
good wrap around his arm. And then as you're wrapping, you need to pull tight so you can see through the bandage. Get it over it. Now you're going to do a couple over the center like that. And we'll put a little pressure on this just so you can kind of experience that for yourself. And now that you've done a couple wraps on there to keep it steady, you need to cover the outsides of it. That's just going to prevent stuff from getting inside the wound or potentially getting snagged and getting ripped open or something on the way to the hospital. So I'll go around the upper part first, do a couple wraps there. Then we'll move it over. Go to the other side, and again, same thing. As you're pulling it, you want to pull it tight enough that you can see through the bandage. Now we'll finish the bandage by going back over the center. Now, if you don't have a tourniquet and you still want to apply more pressure, there are some little tricks that you can do. You can add some twists into the bandage over the wound, and that will actually increase the pressure that's going on the wound. We won't do that too much, though.
Oh, you're fine.
And then once you've got it to the end of your bandage here, you can either use the Velcro, but like I said, that's not going to work very much. So I like to just take a couple fingers, again, go back through to a point where you can tie it off. And then I would put some disruptively dynamic combat medical tape over this just to make sure it's not going anywhere or duct it.
Yeah, I'm a little darker. No, you can't really see discoloration.
A little bit. That side for sure you can, yeah.
Blue.
So you can see, you can actually get decent occlusion just with a bandage.
I did actually poke my finger with a butterfly knife earlier because I was playing with it, so that's what this blood is from.
I didn't stab him, I promise.
Yeah, you didn't. But no, I can't really bend.
Yeah, that's it.
Gotta flex it off. You can
rip it.
You can see my veins popping though. But
do this after hitting the gym.
Yeah.
So there you go. Not too bad. Sweet.
Yeah, thanks, dude. Hopefully this is helpful, you guys.
Hopefully you never have to use it, but
yeah, medical is very important. Like just as important, if not more important than gun stuff. I like the gun stuff too, and I will admit I've neglected like learning medical at times, but I think it's really important, and I want to constantly learn. So this is important stuff, and it's fun. Like doing this at the IFAC course, this was a lot of fun, and I definitely did not stop the bleeding as fast as Mason did it. He did it really quick. It took me a couple minutes to really figure out where, because yeah, this is. Oh. Man,
no, that's fine.
Yeah, it was fun, and you do this for hours. You do tourniquet applications for hours, and just learn a lot. So. Yeah, thank you for all the information in these 3 videos we did.
Yeah.
If you guys have any videos you want to see in the future, specifically medical related or anything else, let me know. Maybe we can get Mason back on. And other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed this little series. It was a lot of fun to do. So thank you again for all the information, Mason.
Just remember, guys, YouTube's a great place to get primers and stuff on this, but nothing takes over for hands-on training. So I would highly recommend you find somebody. It doesn't have to be us, of course. Find somebody reputable, take a good IFAC class. These are skills that everyone I think should have. And I'm really grateful that Ryan will let me come on to kind of show you guys some of this stuff. Hopefully you never use it, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
But at least now you have a basic primer, and as long as you get out there, take a class or something, find a stop the bleed class in your area, you'll have the knowledge you need to hopefully save a life someday.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and stay tuned for my next video.